Hello, everybody. We're very happy to see this full room and that you're all here to listen to our talk. First things first, we will have some small interactive parts. We will ask you some questions. No worry, they will be easy and you don't have to answer them. This whole talk will be recorded, but these parts where you can also tell something about your experience, this will not be recorded. Just for you to know. Yeah, so we will start our presentation with presenting our group, Annika. It spells out to Animal Climate Action, and we're a grassroots activist group. As we were already introduced, we try to join the struggles of animal rights and animal liberation with climate justice. And this group was established in 2015, and we work German-wide. We're an anti-capitalist group, and we're working on the intersection of climate justice and animal liberation. So what do we actually do? We research and write articles. For example, there have been several articles already this year in magazines that are also published by grassroots organizations in Germany. We hold workshops, for example this one, and in other cities in Germany. We bring together the movements, so we join networking meetings from both the animal liberation and the climate justice movements. And of course, we do a lot of actions. So this year, for example, we joined an action from Extinction Rebellion in Berlin. And we also started a process to have a broad alliance and start a big, massive action of civil disobedience against the animal industry in 2020. And later in our talk, we will tell you a bit more about that because we want to also grow and get you all involved in that. So in our group, we already said it's an anti-capitalistic group. So we don't focus mainly on the consumption of animals. Like, we are all vegans in the group, and we think it's really essential and crucial that we're all vegan. And as we will see in the presentation, it also has a huge impact on the climate. But we think to focus only on the consumption is not enough. And I will show you why. This is an example only for Germany. In Germany, the awareness is rising. More and more people are becoming vegan or vegetarian. They're eating less and less meat. But, however, we see that the animal production still rises. So we would think, if we all become vegan, then there's less animal cruelty because then less animals have to be produced. But actually, we see that it is not the case. And maybe you can all ask yourself, why?
Yeah, and the basic answer could be that the ones that decide what is going to be produced is not us, the consumers, but it's the capitalists that are owning the facilities. So it's their turn to decide what to do with their facilities and their workers. So basically, animal production is only a symptom of an unjust and destructive system of profit over humans as well as non-human animals, which we can call capitalism. And this capitalism doesn't care about the people's needs or the animals. They only care about growth, basically. And if you think about it, we are on a limited planet. We have only limited resources, but capitalism depends on independent growth. And independent growth on a limited planet must result in ecological and ethical consequences and catastrophes, basically. So instead of appealing to governments or focusing on individual consumptism, we want to tackle the problem at its roots, basically. So we want to go where it really hurts. We want to go to where the system profiteers are, and that's namely the animal industry. So having said this, we just want to outline quickly how the presentation is built up. After we introduced ourselves, we want to say a few words regarding the climate crisis and the term climate justice. There has been 1 or 2 talks where the climate issue also was covered, so we don't want to go into much depth. After that, we want to talk about the connections between animal production and the climate crisis. And after that, talk about how to utilize grassroots activism for political change, basically. And we have some interactive parts in those 4 sections, but in the end, we also want to have a discussion with you and what you think about what we talked about. Yes, so maybe some of you know the organization Scientists for Futures. It's been established after the Fridays for Future protests around the school kids and the students. And they have some nice graphics and studies. So one is depicted here in the slide. You see a time slide of the recent years, and you see the color which actually shows the average temperature during that year. And one can see that it's the temperature is rising continuously, and it's very red in the recent years and deep red in the last years. And what you can't really see, but the fact is that the last years, 15, 16, 17, and 18, were the 4 hottest years since the beginning of worldwide weather observation. So there's not just some climate change coming at some point, but we are actually hitting a climate crisis, and we are actually already deep in it. The business as usual scenario, which most studies refer to, assume that there will be at least a 3 degrees Celsius temperature rise until the year 2050. It could be even worse, but that's if we don't really take drastic measures to do something against the climate crisis. And on the one hand, there are ecological consequences. The atmosphere is warming up, as we already said. There are more weather extremes, but also the biodiversity declines. Hashtag Extinction Rebellion. The consequences will not just be until we have good measures, but the consequences will be seen in years to come. There will be positive feedback loops at some point. In one talk, we heard about the ice at the poles, which reflect the sunlight, and if they are gone, the water will take up more temperature than before. And there are other feedback loops which will eventually speed up the climate crisis, even if we reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So at some point, we can't really do anything about it anymore. But there are also social consequences. The crisis will continue to severe, for instance, on health and security, but also food safety, agriculture is a big topic, gender equality, and global justice in general. Those are all social consequences that will be affected by the climate crisis.
So, as we have seen, the climate crisis is not only an ecological crisis, and that's why when we try to tackle it, we will not talk only about the climate, but we also have to talk about climate justice. So it's a political and an ethical issue we are tackling here. And this is mostly due to worldwide power structures that have been in place for some centuries. So it was basically white European men who first started exploiting the earth and the resources that were like around the place he lived. When that was not enough, when he was always driven to growth and try to get more profit out of everything, then the place around where he lived was not enough. So, and this is what we call colonization. So he went all over the world and exploited, enslaved the people there and the land. And this is the only reason why we have so much wealth here and why we have all of this industry that is even capable of changing the climate in the way that it is at the moment. So this means that the global north has a historic responsibility to tackle climate change. and those who have done the least or nothing to produce this crisis, they suffer the worst, especially because they can't protect themselves. So it is really crucial that we have a total systemic transformation. We're not only talking about establishing e-cars or e-mobility or something like that, because if we look at this case, where are the resources coming from? Again, they're coming from the global south. So we have to have a whole transformation of our society, the way that we live, the way we interact with one another, the way we treat each other. And this is not possible by appealing to people, by appealing to the government, to appeal to other people who have actually caused the crisis to help us to get out of it. You know, it's kind of paradox. So that's why we are activists in grassroots movements. We think that we are the ones who have to take this responsibility and who have to tackle this climate crisis. And that is where the climate justice movement comes from. And here you see some pictures. The one on your left is from a climate camp. This started all around, this concept started in England and then came to Germany, and now this year it's all over Europe. We see climate camps in Poland, in the Czech Republic, in Austria, in the Netherlands. And it's people coming together for about 1 week to have workshops, as we have it here as well, but also to live the alternative, to organize together, to network, and also to have actions, to actually do something ourselves. And the picture you see on the right is a picture from Ende Gelände. This is a campaign that wants to end coal, which wants a coal phase out in Germany, because in Germany coal or lignite burning of coal is one of the main sources of CO2 and climate change. And so what people have been doing for years is organizing together and actually going into these mines and blocking the infrastructure. And the climate camp started with about 100, 200 people, and now we see 4,000 to 5,000 people coming there. So the movement is actually growing. People are seeing that if they take things in their hands, they can actually change something.
Yeah, and maybe just to mention something, of course we are talking about the European perspective when we talk about the climate justice movement and we explain examples. Of course there are other examples of resistant people in other parts of the world, especially in the global south, where also indigenous people tackle the climate issue, but we mostly talk about our experience and the contexts we are in, such as the European climate justice movement. So we've been talking about the climate crisis in general, but now let's focus on the animal production aspect of the climate crisis. At first we want to refer to the FAO study, the Livestock's Long Shadow. We already heard it in other talks these days. One citation from this study reads the follows: the livestock sector emerges as one of the top 2 or 3 most significant contributors to the most serious environmental problems at every scale, from local to global. So that's been a study from 2006 from the UN, which basically tells everything about the state of the livestock and agricultural sector in general. It's definitely a big problem. And in this study, they say that the total greenhouse gas emissions of animal production is around 20%. A lot of people talk about agriculture in general, is my experience. They don't really like to talk about animals. But even if they talk about agriculture, you can tell them that around 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture actually result from animal production. And on the slide you can see we have a small graph for you. I don't know if you can read it.
Yeah, sort of. So on the left, we have the 5 biggest players in animal production. So it's Fonterra, it's Dairy Farmers of America, it's Cargill, it's Tyson Foods, and it's GBS. And if we add all of those emissions that only these 5 biggest companies emit, then it is a bit more than ExxonMobil, more than Shell, and more than BP. So yeah, it's actually like we all look at Shell and ExxonMobil and BP and say, oh, they're so bad, they destruct everything, they destruct the climate, they destruct our environment, but actually animal production is right up on top in this level. Oh yeah, and of course we said, oh, we want to look at the systemic perspective, but actually we also have something, a small notice for you from the individual perspective. So if you change your diary to a vegan diet, then you can save about 70% of greenhouse gases. Okay. Yeah, so we will continue and give you a few examples that we know. Yeah, they're all definitely from the global north. Yeah, direct actions against the animal industry. And the first picture I want to present to you is on your left. And it was taken during the Eurotier Convention. It's the worldwide biggest trade fair for animal production, and it takes place every second year in Hanover in Germany, so people come together and promote all of their articles for animal production. And last year there were the Climate and Justice Games, where a lot of groups did actions against animal industry, but also against capitalism and the destructive system. And here on this picture you can see how the entrance was blocked by about 15 to 20 people for some time. So by blocking the entrances to a fair, we can raise awareness, but we can also disturb like the functioning of the fair, even if it's just for a small moment. But just imagine what could happen if we're like 1,000 people doing this.
Yeah, and the banner reads, "Capitalism kills people, animals, and our planet." The second image is also taken from the Climate and Justice Games last year's, but it's happening behind those walls and doors. It was inside the fair. People went inside with banners and umbrellas having written slogans on it, and they disturbed the business inside the fair. So they went to talks, to discussions, and just made loud noises, screamed their slogans, went along them. And actually they did this for quite some time. They just continued on from one session to the next, and every time some security people came and wanted to disrupt them, they just continued on, and in the end they just went home. Having disrupted quite a few places in the fair. They did a banner drop as well at some place and just went on. So they had fun, definitely, and they really annoyed them. And again, it was just a few people, maybe 6-7 people, but imagine like there could be 10 groups, 100 groups of 5 to 6 people going along there. They couldn't do their business anymore, and people had fun.
Yeah. So on the left we see a sit-in in front of a slaughterhouse. So here you see 2 people, and the thing that is between them is like a block of concrete, and they have locked their hands in there. So this is if they have their hands locked there, the police cannot just come and like take them away, as we see in the scenes, but they have to get all of the equipment and they have to cut it open, and it takes hours and hours. Yeah, and during this time, no trucks can enter or exit the slaughterhouse. So yeah, we also see a truck there in the background that just has to wait. And yeah, this is how business as usual just cannot work. And the banner reads, "Capitalism destroys humans, animals, and nature."
Yeah, and again, those actions are just organized grassroots so people just organize, they get together, they build all the materials they need, they rent a car, go there and do it on their own. It's not a club, not an organization, no hierarchy that organizes all this. It's just people coming together and doing what they think is right to disturb the animal industry. And it has been going on in Germany for quite a few years. So every once in a while there's such an action. For instance, this year there was a blockade in Düren, close to the Hambach forest, but we'll get to that later on.
And here in this picture you also see 2 people, but of course there are many more people to support them. And also this is only one entry at this slaughterhouse. It is close to Berlin actually. There are 2 entries, and while these people were blocking one entry, another entry was blocked as well by like a free-legged vehicle where like people climbed on top of it. So there are many possibilities to block an entrance, not only by like locking your hands. So you can also think about, be creative and think about your strengths and how you would like to do it. Yeah, on the other picture, this was some time ago. It was a slaughterhouse, right? Mm-hmm. A slaughterhouse was supposed to be built, and this site was blocked by a field occupation, which lasted for a long time.
So and then we have an occupation and blocking of slaughterhouse inside, not from the outside. This is taken from an action in Switzerland. They went inside a slaughterhouse while it was not actually operating at night, before the animals came in, and they locked themselves inside there, quite a few people, and they could disrupt the operation of the slaughterhouse for quite some time until police came, took them out. Yeah, it's not the easiest action, I would say, but it's quite effective when it comes to disrupting the animal industry as usual.
And now we have some other, so these were all like small affinity group actions. We gave you a little bit of a feeling what could it be if there are like not only 2 people or 5 people doing this, but actually hundreds of people. And here we have 2 examples, but that are not related to the animal industry, but where actually hundreds and thousands of people did massive blockades. And the one picture is from Extinction Rebellion. I think a lot of people, if you're all activists, so I guess you all know the pictures of Extinction Rebellion blocking the streets. This is a picture from Berlin. And on the other picture, you can see the blocking of a coal mine in Germany, in the Rhineland. And here we actually have a banner from a German animal rights and animal liberation group, and it says, stop the exploitation from people, animals and nature. So yeah, there are already groups combining this outside from us, even in Germany.
So next we want to report on a new action alliance that has formed around this topic. In July there was an action conference in Hanover in Germany where groups working in the animal rights, animal liberation, but also other topics came together to discuss how to work together against the animal industry. So far there have been actions, but the idea was to scale it up, to make a mass action out of these. Actually, we succeeded in the conference. There were so many people that were really motivated to come together to organize something like this. Now we have monthly meetings where all the groups and people that are involved come together to discuss further plans for such a mass action. On the right you see the first Save the Date flyer we are preparing right now. I wanted to print it in the next weeks. The idea is that in the early summer of 2020 we want to have a camp, an action camp somewhere probably in the northern part of Germany where there's a lot of animal industry. We want to come together, invite all of the activists that are interested and the local people to camp there, bring their own tent. We have a kitchen, we have all the facilities needed, big tents to discuss. And there we want to have workshops, big plenary discussions to get to know each other, to talk about the current issues and to make further plans. But we also want to have a big action then. So after having all these workshops, we want to organize ourselves, get affinity groups, organize the materials we need, and just go ourselves to the place where the animal industry run their profits, go there and disrupt them massively. Yeah. So we can't tell how many people come. This is the first time we do such a thing. But as Luna said, in other fights, sometimes there are hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people. So it would be great if a lot of people come and we can just go there together, go where it hurts, and disrupt the whole business.
And this Action Alliance is also intersectional. So it is also not only focusing on the animal production, the animal industry, but there are also people from the climate justice movement and from the environmental protection. We have people who are active to the theme of food sovereignty. I think there's also a talk on this conference about this subject, and workers' rights as well.
So
and
all these,
yeah, and actually we have 3 points there because those are kind of the spectrums and the groups of the people who appeared on the first meeting. But of course, this is not all. There are like a lot of other forms of oppression that are very important to fight together, and so we want to open up and broader there too. Yeah, everyone is invited to kind of put in their struggle. Yeah, so it's we don't want to fight single issue struggles because the problem we're facing is it's huger than just one issue. So we all have to fight together and have intersectionality and broad alliances. Yeah, broad alliances is also the topic of our next slide. So yeah, you see the small fish. So if we have one huge fish and just small people who are kind of not organized, don't know what they're doing, then they have no other possibility than just like to swim away from the big fish. But if we all organize together, then we can be much bigger. And yes, that's why in our Action Alliance we don't only want to be grassroots groups, but we also want to work together with workers and with farmers who are also exploited. We want to work together with communities who are affected. We want to work together with labor unions and as well with civil societies and NGOs.
So yeah, this was how we think that grassroots activism can have an impact on the political agenda and result in political change. Of course, it's not easy to predict how this works. There's no direct consequence, but we believe that if we go where it hurts, if we tackle the system as a whole, the capitalist system, we can have a power together. If we are many people fighting the system, we can actually have a political saying. We can change the system and work for a better life for all of us.